Rebel Devs Podcast, a show that challenges conventional thinking in the tech industry. Each episode features conversations with solutionists who have taken unconventional approaches to problem solving, pushing the boundaries of what's possible in their respective fields. Join the devolution. Well. We're back at this podcasting thing, or at least I am. It's about 7:30 on a weekday, and yet I'm still at my computer, and I've got some faces staring at me. Is that looks like a Tom? Did I read that right?
You got it. That's Tom, that really long, difficult, unique name.
Tom, it's been a while since you and I spoke. You've been working on any cool tech projects?
Yeah, I've been working on all sorts of tech projects. I don't know if they're cool, but unless you think accounting systems and billing, and I think everybody just fell asleep, so I'll stop it there. That's the extent of my cool nowadays. So this is my hope to get back to cool, man.
Everyone's got to start somewhere. As long as you don't go with a mohawk, I think we'll be okay. And we're not alone tonight. We have someone that you're very familiar with, but listeners of this audio may not be. Who's this Jonah guy that's with us?
And I am a Veeam Vanguard at Cyber Fortress as a product architect, one of the largest Veeam cloud service providers. And I'm happy to be here tonight.
So when you're not trying to help people protect their data and you're not learning about really cool data protection software, Jonah, what do you do outside of that?
That is a good question and depends on the day. Right now, it's beating my head against a wall trying to get a 3D printer working because I have built it, and every time I try to print, something else seems to go wrong.
So I would imagine when you're working on that, or Tom, whatever extracurricular activities you've got going on, I would imagine you'll have to come up with some creative solutions from time to time. I think that's what we wanted to talk about with this podcast, but the title of this podcast is the Rebel Devs Podcast. I think, Tom, it's probably most fitting for you to explain what we're at with this project. I've got some notes here, but I want to hear it straight from you. What are we at with this podcast?
I just think as we get out there in the world of tech, we tend to fall in these little boxes, and everybody thinks we should behave a certain way, think a certain way, do a certain thing. And really what I just kind of want to do is break down the misconceptions out there and just have some fun. So, and my specialty would be DR continuity and more on the executive side. And a lot of times people think, you just fit in this little box and, you fill out your little reports and whatnot. And I think sometimes we forget that we can be really creative with what we do. And that's kind of, I think, where we're going. And side fun projects, too. I'm a big scouter. I think we're going to bring some scouting lessons in here, too. You talk about passion projects. I'm a new boat owner, so I'm sure some of the listeners out there are like, yay, that's so awesome. And the rest are like, haha, give it a year and you'll sink it and be happy. So, we talk about creative projects. Jonah and I were working on a cool one where there's this little bezel that we have to come up with for the boat. And Jonah's working with a 3D scan app and this printer he's trying to build to go out there and get this cool little part. I'm thinking, man, I'm old school. I'm hitting eBay and this thing we used to call Craigslist, to find parts. And so he's all geeking it out and extruding it. And I'm like, yes, I understand extrusion, of course. And I think that's the cornerstone here, right? It's just realizing that we each have our stories and we each bring something to the table that's really cool. So we hope to have some guests and be there and just, I don't know, wherever the wind blows us with this thing sort of thing.
I like that you mentioned the boat and 3D printing and other projects, because I think it's really important for people to understand that as IT professionals, yes, we sit in front of a computer most of the day. Yes, we tend to work with technology that others are completely foreign to. I actually heard on a video I was watching earlier today, I heard that there are young ladies working with technology today who don't know that you can forward email from one mailbox to another. They think they have to go create a separate account and log into every single mailbox to look at all their email. They're trying to play the coupon game, but it's simple stuff like that to you and I that others just don't have a clue about. And whether it be data protection, your 3D printer, your boat, whatever project you're working on, creative solutions and creative application of concepts can make for some downright fun conversations. So we'll dive more into that. Tom, you mentioned some of the things you're working on. Jonah, did you want to add any creative projects that you're working on, or other things where you get to use the knowledge that you've gained in IT in creative ways?
Yeah, the other big project I'm working is tying a ton of smart devices at home into Home Assistant. So actually building out HomeKit and Home Assistant and making most of the devices accessible if my internet goes down rather than all being tied to cloud-based services.
And those all work the first time without any problems or hiccups, right?
If you consider 75% of the home being connected, working without hiccups,
Well, that's a passing grade, isn't it?
I guess.
Yeah, I was gonna say, my weird brain goes. I start hearing things like that, and with my background in DR, it absolutely intrigues me because I'm like, what do you do if it does go home, and then or go down, and then I'm like, well, that's really cool. It's in the cloud. Then my security brain starts kicking in, and I start going through this world of, well, do they know when I'm coming and when I'm going? Where's the data living? And I just start going in all these other areas. And it's funny you were saying about our tech backgrounds. I think it just touches everything we do. I went scouting this weekend and I sat there at a table linked up and I'm just doing a comm system and I'm like, here's how we're going to email and let's get texting and what's our formatting to email to text. And it's going to like the 10th degree and what integrations do we have? And more, man, it's just like my brain goes there. And so it'll be fun to be on some of these topics and I don't know, see if my wild and weird brain will go there still or if it will chill out and enjoy the technology.
And that is the reality side of technology. Yes, we use it day in, day out, but then we also have our skeptic side. So I was part of a conversation recently when we were talking about electric cars and smart cars and things like that. And one guy asked me, would you buy a Tesla? And I said, well, would you allow me to program a computer to fly you without a human being in the pilot seat? And she thought for a second. She said, no, because the computer is just going to break. I'm like, great. Yeah. So I'm not buying a Tesla. It's cool. And as long as the batteries don't burst into flames, it will probably make it there okay. But I drive a Ford currently, and the infotainment system is built based on Microsoft software. And I have to manually reboot that driving down the road from time to time because it just goes off into the weeds. So technology is great and we can use it lots of places, whether it be a car, a boat, somewhere else. But in reality, we know that it goes haywire from time to time and it takes some creative thinking to get us back on track.
Yeah, it's funny. One time we actually, with I'm a super scout here and whatnot, but one of our guys was a 777 pilot instructor, and he took us into those sims, and it's amazing. You talk about would you give a plane without anybody actually sitting there flying it? And my understanding from that experience was they actually have to explain when they go manual. So much of it is computerized. It's crazy. But you're right. There's still somebody sitting there waiting to grab that yoke and get going. I don't know if I could just jump in a car that was going by itself. That sounds so eerie.
I'm right there with you. I've got no arguments.
Where's the young guy in this though, Jonah? You're like the young techie guy. Like I was like, ooh, it's a calculator, and they were like, don't use it on tests, right? I'm a dinosaur. Where are you in this world? You grew up in this whole techie generation. What do you think about this whole self-driving car thing?
That it could be interesting one day, but it's not quite there yet. I trust a smart device to turn light bulbs off and on for me in the house. I don't exactly trust it to drive me somewhere yet without a human still supervising it.
And you fall into which group there, Jonah? Is that was it Gen Z? I think.
It depends on which website you're reading, where it categorizes the split between millennial and Gen Z, because I'm mid 99. So some sites say I fall under Gen Z, but I believe the technical definition is I'm at the very tail end of millennial.
So with that being said, those that are watching this may at some point may see that Tom and I can show some age in our face. Jonah, maybe not so much for you. I'll ask the question to you first, Jonah, for the listeners of this podcast, because it is directly tied to a business, and they want to know, why can they trust what you have to say, Jonah, without it being pure business?
Yeah, I might be on the younger side, but I've had a number of years in the industry already. I have gone through all of Veeam's sorts of certifications. I meet regularly with their R&D teams, and I'm always striving to learn more. And as evidenced by, like you said, it's what, 7:30 p.m. right now.
It's passion. You have a passion for the technology that's behind many of the great things that we use in society. Um, Tom, in your case with the boat, I don't know how new your boat is, but I would imagine that there's some level of technology within that boat that you probably want to have some amount of conceptual knowledge of.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to like the boat deal, I don't know what I'm doing, man. I'm new at this. I assume there's technology in there, but my boat's like a 90 something. I was like, I want more mechanical. I'll figure out the motor deal. I think I've got like a GPS fish tracker so I don't run it into the ground. I'm definitely not going on the USS Minnow tour or anything like that, or I will be lost in the world. But Jonah talks about being in the industry. And being quite the expert. I look back at my pathing and I started thinking when he was talking, I was like, man, I remember unofficially, of course, DOS and whatnot in there. And then I thought, when was I a professional? And I was like, the first things that I worked with, OS2, Warp, like that was like the cat's meow back in the day. And equally, I remember kind of going through the test material for NT351 and then actually starting out on NT4 and being kind of that first batch of NT4 gurus. So, I started thinking and going, yeah, I've been at this a long time. But the sad news is a lot of that doesn't really pertain. I guess the concepts do, but I've had to stay current. And in my own paradigm shift, I realized I went from being that wizard engineer to that I'm really good with spreadsheets and budgets and cyber carrier and stuff. And it's interesting because young me would look at old me and go, what are you doing, man? Like, you're not working with the cool stuff anymore. And older me is like, yeah, man, but look at this pivot table where I can show you how much your power consumption on a rack is, and we can totally get more. And again, half the people just turned off and went, man, let me go talk to my dad because I'm sure he's all excited about that. So it's weird being all over the map and going down those days, early CCNA days, making the big conversion from NT4 to 2000 Active Directory to XP, giving us USB. Now people are just like, I'm not even using USB anymore, guys. Like, what are we talking about? So as we talked all this cool stuff, it's been fun staying current with it and just watching the trends. I think something we probably should cover at some point, and I think about this, is advice we give the up-and-comers, right? Years ago, we'd say, hey, you totally want to be in a certification track, and now we're like, I don't know about that, man. It's all about experience and what you can do. So it is an interesting little world we have here.
I was going to go there, but you beat me to it. And that just is for those that are younger. You don't have to have all the experience if you can understand concepts and how they're all connected. Listening to what we're going to create here may be helpful in that it may help you to see things in a way that you wouldn't otherwise see it. That, Tom may see it one way, or Jonah, or it's one of our guests in the future. All reasons why content that we're going to put out here may become quite helpful for you. So there's a quote that we're going to be using here a bunch, Tom, and I'm hoping that you can speak to this a little bit. But I've got it here in the notes as the devolution. You want to speak to what the heck a devolution is?
Sure. Devolution, it really takes a lot of the small building blocks of technology that we have, and we start seeing things come together and just regenerate into new and exciting things. We sort of looking at how do you use technology, and you'll see things like hackathons, and they'll be like, oh, your car can do this, but someone will get in there and hack it and go, using the existing technology, how can we go ahead and modify how it will be used? So I think with the devolution, I think part of this concept is a lot of the technology we have, how do we take our existing tech how do we break through the constraints that we think are there to really just kind of bring about something new, a new way of thought or a success, and just tear down those walls. I really kind of drop it back to kind of like the Steve Jobs world of mid-range Apple, kind of when he came back after his exit for a while there, and it was kind of under the concept of, why do we hire smart people and tell them how to do their jobs? Why don't we hire smart people and they tell us how to do their jobs? And I think that's what we're going to see when we talk to the guests and different folks around here, is we're going to listen to what they have to say and hopefully take it to a next level by all means. So that's kind of what I think about the devolution. I don't know. I mean, Jonah, what do you think about this? Is there a different mindset that you have with devolution?
I don't think so. I mean, I kind of think of the same approach that you do with that, and maybe that's the household I was raised in. Haha.
I think that answer is wrong, and I have to just jump in here right now. Jonah, you and I have had some conversations, and I have listened to you go on about some of the ways that you've connected widget A to widget B. Give us a story about something like that, because I think that speaks perfectly to what the devolution is or could be.
First of all, something we see commonly in the Veeam world, instant recovery into vCloud Director. Something not really supported today. You can very much go into VMware vSphere, but not vCloud Director without jumping through hoops. And traditional vCloud Director import settings would have you spending a lot of time restoring machines, cloning them after you've restored them, but there's ways in which you can tinker and actually get those instant recoveries to present into vCloud, which means you can have that instant VM recovery while also having that multi-tenancy approach as a service provider.
Did we just somehow loop automation into this, Tom?
We did, and the funny thing is he said the word Veeam, and a bunch of us are Veemers, Tide-centric people here, and immediately my brain went back to in a former life working for cloud providers and still consulting with them. It's always been shocking to me the lack of automation that existed out there, and I think that's why I started the consulting company, was the big gap with that automation. And it's funny, a lot of the skills we learned in automation really wasn't in the Veeam world. It was in other worlds, like playing around with this home automation that Jonah's talking about, or myself, websites. How can we take this website and integrate 3 different calendar sources into one? How do we propagate it across? And we learned all this. And then we started getting into our day jobs where they absolutely just sort of paid us to actually work on technology. It was pretty cool. And it was like, man, why is this not all working? So by all means, it's interesting that Jonah says that, because, yeah, so much automation isn't there. And it's just a scary thing. And even as I look at the up-and-comers in the field, whereas I would have said, hey, get into these certification tracks, you're in IT, maybe some bash or batch scripting. Yeah, I went to batch, man. I would tell the newer guys to say, it really is IT plus a lot of the scripting. If I had to start my career over, it would be scripting and languages, because of that automation. So many things, just being able to speak across the stacks is so important.
Yeah, and I would definitely say these days, PowerShell and REST API seem to be where it's at increasingly in the market from that standpoint, especially as Microsoft is starting to build out their cross-platform compatibility with .NET and PowerShell.
All right, so y'all are getting way too technical. We're just trying to get the listeners' attention so far. Let's put a pause on the technical mentions for a moment, and let's pay the bills for a moment. So, for those of you listening, if any of this has piqued your interest and you think you might want to hear what we have to say moving forward, definitely please subscribe, favorite the podcast website. We'll make sure all the links are in the show notes, and they'll be included when this goes out. But we're going to move on to some fun stuff. But definitely hashtag Rebel Devs. If you want to join, you want to participate, hashtag Rebel Devs. Whether you're a seasoned solutionist or just starting out, the Rebel Devs podcast is a must listen. So join us. Comment, share, and subscribe. Be part of the Rebel Devs.